Good evening, guys. Welcome to Sabbath with Soul. We're going to get started this evening. Sorry, I was running a few minutes late. I don't like to run late, but I do my best to be on time for you guys. So I'm going to try to go ahead and project my voice a little bit and give people time to enter the chat, enter the Sabbath with Soul experience. We're going to just take a few minutes here to get started while we let the lo-fi beat just kick it a little bit. Hopefully you guys have had a wonderful, restful Friday and Saturday. And for those of you that go to worship tomorrow or have the day off from work, hope you guys enjoy yourselves and have a good time. So we're going to just give it another minute here and wait for people to enter the room. For those of you that'll be watching on the replay, you guys, we just came through Purim and a full moon for March. And if you guys are interested in those topics, you can check out my Purim video. It was a little bit of a two-parter, and then the second part had a bonus full moon discussion. So if you guys are interested in that, you can check it out as well. And we're going to just give it a few more seconds here, and we are going to get started. All right. So I promised you guys that I would do a teaching about the Shema, which is the prayer that I say when I start the videos or start the teachings, okay? And so I promised you guys I would do a little bit on what the Shema is and why I say it, and then I myself will do my best to go ahead and start that with every one of my videos, because that's what I'm naturally inclined to do. So the Shema is recited at synagogues around the world twice daily by Orthodox Jews as well as by some Christians, and is usually recited facing the east. Shema literally means listen, heed, or hear and do Yisrael. The Shema is regarded by many Hebrews as the most important prayer in Judaism. Why is that? That is because it reminds us of the key principle of the faith. There is only one God. This is a monotheistic principle. So mono is one, and theism, theo, all of that is God. So if you hear theistic, that means God. So mono, one theistic God. All right. So it's a one God principle. This part of the Shema is taken from the Torah, and it's Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9. Okay. And Deuteronomy 6, 4 is usually like a shortened version of the Shema, and the full Shema is Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 9. And if you guys give me a second right here, I'll go ahead and read it. I need to just pull up another source. Technically should have been already on my screen, but I know you guys will give me a little bit of grace while we get Deuteronomy 6, 4, 9. Affectionately known as the Shema. And I'm going to go ahead and read it for you guys in the ESV. And we say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord with all your heart and with and with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hands, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay? So many Jews say the Shema 3 times a day, in the morning, in the evening, and before they go to sleep. I personally pray at 9, at 12, and at 3. And if you remember, we talked about in the video on Tuesday, we talked about halakha, where you learn and who you learn under in the Hebrew, under your rabbi or in your community. That's, the practice you would so kind of follow, just like different church denominations have their own different ways that they do stuff. So, but many people pray at 9, 12, and 3. And again, you normally face the east, and we say again, Shema Israel. And in the Hebrew, we say Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch, Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam, Vayed. And next week, we'll touch on the Shema a little bit more, and we'll look at the Hebrew version of it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So in many Hebrew homes, the first 2 paragraphs of the Shema are written on a scroll, and they're placed inside a mezuzah, which is nailed to a doorpost or gate. So that fulfills the commandment of Deuteronomy 6, chapter 6, verse 9. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay? So by touching the mezuzah every time they enter their home, Hebrews show their faith and love to God. There are those who then kiss the hand that touched it. So you can think of this as like a cornerstone prayer. And nobody says you need to get bogged down in rituals or whatever. Remember that through Yeshua, you don't do this stuff because you have to do it. You do it because you can. And so it's whatever, if you want to do this, you can do it. Through Yeshua, you don't have to do it. You're not under the law. You don't do it because you have to do it. You do it because you can do it. Okay? So that's the Shema, and that's why we say it. And that concludes the first part of tonight's video. Now we're going to do a quick review. And just touching on last week, we talked about David and we did our introduction into the Psalty Psalm series. And tonight we're going to dig into part 2, Psalm chapter 2, and we're going to talk a little bit more about David and his contribution to the writing of the Psalms. And we'll also talk a little bit more about some other authors of the Psalms as well. So we reviewed David as shepherd, soldier, outlaw, mercenary, king, killer, servant, legend, and icon last week. We talked about David as a king in that time, that he was so unique because of his faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Again, that monotheism, that was not the religion du jour. Most of the people around were pagan gods, and they served multiple gods. But David was unique in that he came along and was very staunch in his faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So David's faith really set him apart from other kings of that time and other kings of Israel specifically, okay? But we talked about also that the thing that set him apart even more was his willingness to be utterly contrite, when he knew that he committed grave sins, including killing his friend Uriah in order to take his wife Bathsheba. The fact that he was utterly contrite, and he was always inquisitive and really seeking after the ways of the Lord down to the deepest recesses of his soul, that is what really set him apart in God's eyes. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. And even though he stumbled, he never fell and just gave it all up and turned his back on God. And that has to be the defining point between whether or not you're going to stay on a path of destruction or whether or not you're going to turn it around, brother, and just come back to who God is, okay, and what He has for your life. And so with David as the shepherd, well, we say, how deep can it go with the shepherd boy? And remember, we went over some free jewelry about the shepherd's tree that's native to the Kalahari Desert, that has the deepest documented roots, going down more than 230 feet. So that fact we brought out when we discussed Psalms chapter 1, when it talked about what kind of man, how strong would a man be? A man that doesn't do certain things, okay? A man that is blessed is a man, according to Psalms chapter 1, that does not do what? Does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, does not stand in the way of sinners, and does not sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. And he is like a tree planted by streams of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and his leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like the shaft that the wind drives away. So in my research, it was so interesting that I found this little fact about this shepherd's tree in the Kalahari Desert, and so the Kalahari, there's really not a lot of water for miles around. But yet this shepherd's tree that's native to the Kalahari can grow roots as deep as 230 feet and maintain those deep roots despite the lack of water. And so, just like us, if we stay grounded in Christ, we may be in the desert and we may be where there's no water around. But if our roots are grounded in Christ down to the deepest depths that we can get them, and stay grounded and knit our souls together with Yah, then even in the drought, even in the desert, even where there isn't water for miles around, you will still have those deep roots and they will still be strong because Yah will be with you. Okay? So that's the end of my review. And now let's dig a little bit more into the Psalms. So, one thing that I wanted to kind of touch on tonight was, um, there's the way the Psalms lined up with David's life. And it was easy to see how he wrote according to everything that went on with his life, that all of that, and it coincides with First and Second Samuel, and I think some of the Kings. And that's an exhaustive Bible study. And you guys, I will only do what you guys kind of really want to see on the channel, and I will throw out the ideas as this channel grows, as the Lord allows people to see this, and you guys hear me say these things. If I see that you guys really want those topics as a Bible study, I will do them and I'll say it. If you guys want me to really do a nice Bible study where we really sit and line up the events that happened in David's life and go through the Psalms and see how they matched up, I'll do that. Let me know. But we'll talk about a certain distinction. Um, so the following breakdown pertains to the Psalms that you'll see with superscriptions. That's intros. And if you guys look at the Psalms, you'll see that almost pretty much all of them have like a little intro, like right underneath where you see where the chapter is. The ones that pertain directly to David's life, I found a interesting categorical grouping of these that I thought you guys might find interesting, because a lot of people might not know David as an outlaw, but he definitely was one. And I didn't even know this at the time when I made this last week. But I know David as an outlaw, and so it was interesting for me to learn this, and it's so fun to do this channel in the way that I will learn things as I go along too, as I'm doing this to present to you guys. So okay, so back to this. So the following breakdown, the little discussion that we'll have, talks about the Psalms with the superscription. So these superscriptions, these intros, pertain directly to David's life if you look at them, okay? So a lot of these were written while David was on the run from Saul. These are known as the songs of the outlaw. That comprises of Psalm 7, Psalms 34, Psalms 52, Psalms 54, Psalm 56, Psalm 57, Psalm 59, Psalm 63, and Psalm 14. Okay? Those were written while he was on the run, and they are known as the songs of the outlaw. Okay? David was really about that life. Okay? The sweetest songs are born out of the saddest moments. The remainder of the Psalms that have the personal superscriptions that you can see that it's written there, that it relates directly to David, they link to specific occasions after he ascends to the throne. These songs are known as the songs of the king. That's Psalm 3, Psalms 18, Psalm 30, Psalm 51, Psalm 60, and Psalm 89. So just in case you guys want to jot that down, the Psalms that were written while David was on the run from Saul, they are known as the songs of the outlaw. Those are Psalm 7, 34, 52, 54, 56, 57, 59, 63, and 14. And the remainder of the Psalms with the personal superscriptions linked to specific occasions after David ascends to the throne, those are known as the songs of the king. Psalms 3, 18, 30, 51, 60, and 89. So now we'll get into a little free jury. David didn't write all the Psalms. He wrote about half, so 73 out of 150 Psalms David wrote. Now, that's some good credit right there. I mean, you wrote half the Psalms, but sometimes, as you're growing up or you're learning about the Bible or hearing about the Bible, you would kind of think that David wrote all the Psalms. When I was a little girl, that's what I thought. But the Psalms actually name more than 7 authors, including 5 individuals and 2 family dynasties. And some of the Psalms were written hundreds of years later, way after David came through, okay? So let's talk about some of them. So Asaph and his sons were actually ordained by David to lead the people in worship. So they were Israel's. Asaph was Israel's first choir director. Okay, this was they first praise team. David was the first king to really set up the city of David and the city of Jerusalem. Okay, so this basically here, you got the first praise team here of Israel, Asaph and his sons. So they were ordained by David to lead the people in worship, and they were then reinstalled when Nehemiah rebuilt Jerusalem, when the walls were fallen the first time. Okay. Another author credit is the sons of Korah, and you guys will find in Numbers 26:11. Korah rebelled against Moses and Aaron, and God made the earth swallow them up. Well, his son survived, his generation survived, his dynasty survived, his legacy survived, and his sons continued to serve in the house of the Lord. So not only did they continue to serve in the house of the Lord, they also gained a writing credit of writing a psalm. And they wrote that psalm with a guy by the name of Heman, not He-Man, for all my 80s cartoon kids. Not He-Man, but Heman. He was a wise man who wrote a psalm with the sons of Korah. And I want to say it was Psalms 88. His brother Ethan the Ezrahite is also credited. We don't know much about Ethan except that he was a famous wise man. He was so wise that the Bible even makes it a point to tell us that Solomon was wiser than him. Now, Solomon wrote Psalm 72 and Psalm 127, and Moses wrote Psalm 90. Okay? So that concludes our little pre-Bible study. So now we will get into tonight's Psalty Psalm, which is Psalm chapter 2. And the scriptures say, why do the nations rage? And we are in the ESV, okay? Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? I was like, they speak in Ebonics. The peoples plot in vain. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. Okay, so right here, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together. Against who? Against the Lord and against his anointed. So this is telling you plain out and simple that the people who are ruling us set themselves and take counsel together. Against who? Against the Lord, Yah God of Israel. And against who? Against his anointed. Is that you? Is that you? Then you need to take notice that you're an enemy of the state. Okay? What do they say? They say, let us burst their bands apart. Let us, well, King James says bands, I believe. And this says, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. So they're basically, when they get pretty much tired of taking care of the masses, that's what they do, okay? Now let's see whether or not that's in plain English. Am I saying anything wrong here? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against who? Against the Lord, and against who? Against his anointed. And what do they say? Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. Well, what's God's response? He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. And what will he do? Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. David says, I will tell of the decree. The Lord said unto me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. Oh, let's go back. So who's having secret meetings? The kings of the earth. What are they doing? Setting themselves and taking counsel together. Against who? Against the Lord and against his anointed. What are they saying? Let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. So basically, they plot to destroy us, okay? But who's sitting in the heavens laughing? The Lord, holding them in derision. He will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury. Who's his trump card? God said, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said unto me, you are my son. Today I have begotten of you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, those same nations, and the ends of the earth your possession. The same kings of the same earth. This is the same earth that will be your possession. What shall you do? You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now what's the warning? Now therefore, O kings, be wise, be warned, O you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish from the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this broadcast. We didn't go too long tonight, only a little bit less than 30 minutes, but we did actually cover a lot, guys. We covered the Shema, and we'll go over it again real quick for those that just came in. We covered the Shema, recited at synagogues around the world twice daily by Orthodox Jews. as well as by some Christians, and is usually recited facing the east. It literally means listen, heed, or hear and do Yisrael. It's regarded by many as the most important prayer in Judaism. This is because it reminds us of the key principle of the faith. There is only one God, monotheistic, one God. And we read Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 9. We talked about that many Jews say the Shema 3 times a day, in the morning, in the evening, and before they go to sleep. I pray at 9, 12, and 3. Remember, halakha, we talked about that. How you operate in your community based on what you learned. So Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9. That is a foundational prayer, okay? And we did our quick review about David. And we talked about the songs of the outlaw versus the songs of the king. David did not write all the Psalms. He wrote about half of them, 73 out of 150. And we went over all the other authors of the Psalms, which included Solomon and Moses. So I hope you guys enjoyed this session. If the Psalm is short, the lesson might not be too long. I try to throw in some other information there for you guys to chew on. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful week until we meet again on Tuesday. This has been Sabbath with Soul. Remember, we're going to keep the videos as short as needed, but as long as necessary. I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, pride may fall, but humble never stumbles. Soul made and out.